Scheduling sex and other great professional advice for married couples in business on today's Pollinator podcast.
Thank you so much, Dr. Marcia Kimeldorf, for being on our podcast today. We talk to so many married couples who are in business together, and we start kind of seeing reoccurring themes pop up. And so I was really excited to actually get a specialist, an expert on our podcast to kind of talk about some of these things that kind of keep popping up and getting your advice and guidance on how married couples who are working together can handle these. So I'm really excited. But before we dive in, because I have questions, I'd love for you to introduce yourself and tell our audience a little bit about you.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I am a clinical psychologist. I've been licensed for about 15 years. I have been practicing and doing psychotherapy for about 20 years, including training. And I have worked in a whole bunch of different sorts of contexts. I've worked in hospitals. I've worked in clinics. Now I'm in full-time private practice, and I am licensed in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Florida. And I am mostly working with, I work with individuals and I work with couples. And some of that stuff is regular life issues, anxiety, depression, work stress, family issues, dating problems, relationship stuff. And sometimes people come to me specifically for sex related concerns. So I see individuals who are having sexuality concerns and couples who are, that's a part of the issue that they're having, either the main issue or in addition to other couples issues, they're also having intimacy or other sex related issues. So that's what I do.
So we're going to kind of dive in because I really want to make sure we have time to hit all these because these are really good. So from your experience as a couples therapist, what do you think makes marriage hard in general, even for couples who don't work together? Like, what are some of those common concerns or difficulties that you hear about?
Well, marriage is tough, right? Like, people come into a marriage with their own sets of hopes and dreams and fantasies and wishes for how their life's going to go. And then all of a sudden you're coming together and you have to navigate different personalities, personal issues, there's constant compromise. You may be, surprised about how hard it is to live with somebody or to share your life with somebody and have to be compromising a lot more. And then there's, of course, all the issues that go along with just being married for a long time. Sometimes there's kids issues, there's home issues, there's chores issues. It's tough when you're on your own. Maybe people are lonelier than when they have a partner, but they don't have to share, hey, if I feel like leaving a dish in the sink, it doesn't matter. Or if I want to be messy or I want to be neat, there's nobody who's going to cause any conflict. So marriage is tough. It's two people having to make it work together, right? So that just makes it tough to begin with.
Since you've been at this for over a decade now, and kind of this whole transition, and people are always talking about like the changes in society that have come along with the internet and all these other things. What, if any, changes have you seen happen in the last 15 years, or maybe new stressors, or things that maybe our grandparents and parents didn't necessarily have to deal with?
Well, I'd say a big one that comes up with that is sort of the complaint that, he's always on his phone. She's always on her phone. They're always, I have couples who are telling me that they're physically together, but they're sitting at opposite ends of the couch and they're both staring at their phone there. And rather than talking to each other, rather than sitting closer on the couch, watching something together, having their legs touch or holding hands or something, they're just like in their own world and they're coexisting, but they're not really feel together. And I think, 20, 50 years ago, we had more shared focus. We're all going to watch the same play or TV show, or maybe there's two separate sections of the newspaper, but it's a little bit harder to get so sucked into your own world back then. And now with the constant fast-paced, everything changing all the time on the internet, that's a lot harder. So I do hear that as probably the biggest complaint. And it's hard to pull oneself away. Even if both members of a couple know it would be better if we put our phones down. They're just so addictive. So I think that's a new stressor, fairly new.
Hard. For sure. Definitely for sure. So something that a lot of the couples that we spoke to, and we kind of struggle with too, is like the business never truly gets turned off. Like maybe, we're not in front of our computers, we're not meeting with people, but it's always in the back of our heads. We're always talking about it. Like it's hard to separate the two. Is that okay? Is that not okay? Like how do we create those boundaries of the work versus your personal married life? If you need boundaries, how do you set those?
I would argue, yes, you need some sort of boundaries, right? And there's different kinds of boundaries. So I'll start with physical boundaries, right? In an ideal world, you would not have every single place in your home be a place where you talk about work and talk about everything else. Like if you could, for example, say in the bedroom, all we do is rest, sleep, have sex, unwind. We don't talk about work there. But we can talk about work in the kitchen and in the living room and in our offices and everywhere else. Then you have like a protected sort of safe space psychologically. There's sort of a comfort in, okay, this is where we are when we're not working. This is where we're trying to have the other aspects of our relationship take center stage, right? So if we can set that up with a physical boundary, I think that's awesome. You know, they always say that even for sex, for couples who are, struggling with their sex life, don't do work in bed or don't do things that are not sexy in bed, because then you're kind of not associating sex with sleep and, associating your bed with sex and with sleep, which is what it's meant to be. So similarly, if you're trying to separate a boundary and make a boundary in your life between your work life and your personal life, you can have a physical space that we don't talk about work in here. That's one good way.
That's very, very good advice, because it's very, it's tough. Like questions come and you're maybe in a conversation or a meeting may be coming up or something like that. And all these things are still rolling. It's like, no, we're gonna like focus over here. But
or even get up and leave the room if you have to. Like if it's a topic that
well, I think that may be
it feels weird.
Maybe like no.
We gotta go ahead. You should take us over here.
Walk outside. If the kids aren't in the house, you can walk out naked. But we're
on a quick road. Yeah.
Well, I know something like usually like right when we're about to go, I know sometimes things will pop in my head right before like we're literally about to go to sleep. I want to like say something to him. I'm like, no, if I bring this up, like we're not going to get to bed. We're not going to get to sleep. And so I've tried to like have like a journal next to me to just write it all out. So then in the next morning, we can tackle this in the morning. We're not tackling this, at 10 o'clock at night when we're like literally trying to like shut it down and go to sleep for like the next busy day.
That's an excellent suggestion. And something else I was going to say, because, sometimes people feel like they got to bring it up at night because otherwise they're going to forget, or they want to keep thinking about it so they don't forget. Just get it out of your head onto a piece of paper. You're not going to forget, and you're not supposed to be working on it while you're sleeping anyway. Rest, and it won't be forgotten. You'll do it in the morning, right? So I think that's an excellent idea to write it down and, resist the urge to bring it up the second it comes to your mind if it's too late in the night for that.
Schedule, send a text.
I know.
6 a.m.
Yeah. Schedule, send a text, schedule, send an email.
I like that. Perfect.
Another thing about boundaries, I just want to say, you can also create just sort of like emotional or like time boundaries. Like, even though we still have a lot to talk about when it comes to be 10 o'clock at night, we're not going to do it anymore, or we're going to take 5 hours on Sunday where there's no work talk, or there's, however you want to carve it out. It can be physical space, it can be time, it can be rules about where, when. But I do think it is important to be thinking about that, especially if it's starting to encroach and feeling like it's 24/7 and we never get a rest. For your mental health, it's important to do that, I think.
No, that is fantastic. I love that. So what are some simple, practical frameworks couples can use, especially when they're working together, to have difficult conversations where, maybe there's an important decision that needs to be made regarding the business and you're not in agreement, to like, without it turning into a blow up? Because that's something where too is like, you're married and your business, so like sometimes those lines blur, and sometimes how you speak to one another is not the same way that you would speak to a fellow team member or like an employee.
And I've seen other guests on your podcast discuss similar issues. Yeah, that is tricky. And, when we love somebody very much or we feel very close to them, we often don't treat them as politely and kindly because we're like, oh, they're always going to be there for me. Like it's similar to the way teenagers might like be meanest to their mom and dad, but super friendly to their friends because, oh, mom and dad are never going to disown me for being rude. So let me get out my rudeness on them. Like couples might do the same thing working together. Oh, well, this is, they know what I mean. I can just kind of say it lazily, but using careful wording, especially when it's a tough topic, is important. And so I would say a few things. One, schedule it. If it's an important topic, and by scheduling, I don't mean it has to be 2 weeks from now, but rather than just coming into the partner and saying, hey, listen, I got to talk to you about this. What if they're in the middle of something? What if they were sending an email, thinking about, who knows what? It's much better if you can say, hey, there's something I think is really important. We got to talk about. Is now a good time? And let the partner say, actually, no, I need 10 minutes. Okay, great. I'll come back to you in 10 minutes, right? Because you're also going to get a much better response from your partner if they are ready for the conversation and know it's coming rather than if they're irritated that you've interrupted. So start with that, schedule it, and then try really hard to like take down the emotion if it's emotional. And really, this part's hard, but I think this applies for couples who work together and couples who don't. Rather than A lot of times people are either fighting to get their point out, just like, let me say my point. And then as soon as I hear that you've stopped saying words, I'm preparing for my words to come out rather than really, really listening. People are usually busy trying to make their counter argument and being prepared for the moment of silence when the person's finally done and they can just speak. So what I'd like if couples to do, and I ask them to do, especially when they're in distress, is pause, slow it down. I'm going to talk. And I'm going to say after the whole, hey, is this okay? Is this a good time? Yes. Okay. Say, I'm thinking we got this problem, A, B, C, da, da, da. Pause. The other partner should ideally say, okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that we have this problem, A, B, C, and you're feeling X, Y, Z about it. Did I get that right? And then the partner can say, yes, yes, I understand. Then they react. Like then they respond, right? Or no, you didn't quite get it. I wasn't saying that I feel ABC. I was saying I feel DE. Oh, okay. Now I understand. And then the other person says their reaction to it rather than, well, no, I think that, and it's a little bit tricky to do, but just by slowing it down. And sometimes a way to do it is to say, like, when I'm talking, I'm holding the pen, and then I'll hand you the pen and it's your time. So you're not just fighting for airtime, hearing the other person, making sure you've understood them before you respond. Also, one last thing is trying not to jump in and solve the problem before the other person has finished expressing what their concern is about it. I think a lot of times people are like, oh gosh, my partner is having a trouble. Let me solve it. Let me tell them what to do. And that's often not what you're looking for when you come to your partner having a problem. You might just want them to understand, help you think it through, rather than tell you what to do, which can often cause problems. I'm smart. I know I don't need you to tell me what to do. I just need you to listen, tell me if I'm on the right track, or let's talk this through together. Let's see if we can come up with the best.
Can you explain that a little more? Right. Like that whole, well, I mean, I know this is, the last piece there is like, maybe focusing more, and then like the interruption thing, maybe focus more at women. I hear that more from guys I know too. Like, the men from Mars, women from Venus kind of stuff. But like can you explain like the need and the importance that one spouse of either gender, but might need into just kind of like verbally process some things out and to be heard and like, because I know this is me and other guys, like laugh and talk and sometimes get frustrated about it all the time. Like, why are you coming to me with a problem if you don't need advice? Because we're so conditioned to like, you just figure it out for yourself, right? Like, you don't go ask for help until you actually need help. And even then you might not. So somebody's actually coming to you for help. It's like they need a solution to the problem.
Okay. Now, to how you said it, I agree. It's not always the man is one way, the woman is the other way. And this can also obviously happens in homosexual couples or more complex couple relationships. But either way, people don't always have the same need when they speak. When they're coming to a partner, I think it's a mistake to assume that the person is coming always wanting you to solve the problem. I do think, using your example, I think men perhaps are a little bit more conditioned to be like, I see a problem, I just want to solve it. But if you're dealing with, let's say in your situation, I'm getting the sense that it's maybe Shannon is the one who might want to talk it out, verbalize it, get her thoughts out of her head, have you understand. So I'll just use you guys so I don't overgeneralize, or
Sure.
I'll just say it sounds to me like, even though that seems a little counterintuitive to you, Will, she might be coming sometimes because she wants you to hear it. There is a value in being heard and understood. And I think a lot of people want that. Maybe in some men, it's sort of socialized out of them, but there's nothing wrong with wanting to really be heard and understood. And even if you're just like, yeah, that is a tricky problem. That sucks. No wonder you're upset. If somebody yelled at me, I would feel really bad too. That's a terrible feeling. I get it. That might be all she needs. Or, yeah, this person has been really challenging for us to work with. I totally understand why you're frustrated with them. Not, hey, call them and tell them this, and that's something that I think a lot of people have the urge to just sort of, my partner's in distress, let me fix their distress. And you mean well, you're not doing anything wrong. You're like, she's upset. I want to fix it. I don't like seeing my partner distressed, but it's not always the way. It's not always the way to just jump in and help. And then to say to you, Shannon, you can also say, that's not the kind of help I need. Or the person who's being come to for help can say, let me just see, what kind of help do you want here? Do you want me to just listen? Do you want me to offer solutions? Do you want me to validate that what you're saying makes sense? How can I help? Rather than having to guess. You shouldn't have to guess if you're not sure what she's looking for.
That's good. Because I know there are and definitely not consistent about it. There are times I'll be like, I just need to verbally process, you know.
And we've gotten,
and,
I mean, because
but there's
this is not, we've been in this for, over 20 years. So
Yeah.
it's like we've gone through and seen all the things and maybe not all things. There's always new things to learn, but this is not a new problem. So we've gotten much better about that and kind of understanding to be listened, but it's still, it still kind of happens. And there's those natural impulses.
Yeah.
And I was in another group one time, and like one of the rules of the group that we would talk about, even we were just sitting around a campfire, not a campfire, a backyard fire, smoking cigars and drinking scotch, but talking about these things where one of the rules was, advice is given when it's asked for. I brought that to another group that I go to on every month, and there's a topic, and there's about 20 to 25 of us that'll be there, and everybody has 3 minutes, and we're all business owners, and we're talking about that particular topic. And sometimes it's very business related, sometimes it is family related or other, life, or we're telling stories and we're sharing our experience.
It's all men.
And it's all men, and they're every usually about once a year or so, one topic will come up that is specifically supposed to be about, hey, like, let us know what are you struggling with? Like, what's the hardest thing you're facing right now in business or life or whatever it is. And I remember when that first came up, it was probably 5-6 years ago. So a question came up like that. And even though it was said at the beginning, like, hey, advice is only going to be given if it is asked for, like, it got almost crazy because, like, guys were like shifting in their seats, like wanting to say something or like, and some guys could not help themselves. And like, we had to like shut some dudes down, and guys got pissed off. What do you mean? And it's a very, very hard impulse to kind of learn and understand that, like, sometimes just having the validation of being heard and knowing that you're not the only one that's experienced it, even if you already have the plan of action and what you need to do, but it's just kind of understanding that you're not crazy for having whatever other kind of head trash or things getting in the way of preventing you from doing it and feeling some kind of way about it.
Sure. That's really interesting. I mean, just I'd be curious. My guess, again, I hate to generalize, but a group of women might be slightly different than that, just on average. Because I think there's a lot of I could just, from the way you're saying, these men are just like, I want to solve it. I want to tell them what to do. I want to jump in. There is a sort of an impulse, and it's not just men, again, but some people are more oriented toward problem solving, logical. What's to be done? Why are we talking about how we feel about it? That seems counterproductive. But for a lot of other people, that's a necessary part before you can really feel good about a decision, is to talk it out, to make sure that what you're saying makes sense and other people get it.
Well, and the other interesting thing about that, I think it comes with just a level of maturity as well, is now that I'm thinking back, that like some of the guys that were like the hardest to rein in were some of the younger guys in the group that, maybe had experience in a particular thing. They had a solution or answer, but, maybe not quite as much life experience, where other guys who had, all kinds of experience and for sure had some sage advice that could be offered, they're just back, just kind of like nodding their head.
Also, part of one of the challenges of couples who work together is you're pretty much around each other like all the time, almost all the time. So how important is it for each person or each partner to have other people that they can talk to, whether it's mentors, friends, or peers, not just themselves, each other?
Very. Next question. No, just kidding.
Next question.
It's very important for anybody to have more than one person in their lives. Like, even if you're not working with your partner, but you work for yourself and you work alone, you can't, I don't think just having your spouse is enough. I think it's important for people to have friends or colleagues or other coworkers or mentors or clergy or, neighbors or somebody else you can bounce things off of, because even in a wonderful relationship, it's just not enough. And then who also, by the way, are you going to go to when you kind of need to vent about your partner? Like, you can't live a life where you're only talking to that one. This is sounds like it's healthy. People benefit from hearing diverse perspectives, other people's ideas, or hey, let me just, it doesn't mean you have to go off somewhere and bash on your spouse or whatever, but just, hey, we've been having this issue. What do you think? Or I've been thinking about this, and I won't even tell you what my partner thinks, but what do you think? And just to get other people's perspectives, you don't have to necessarily take them, but I think it's healthy to have other people in your life. Have a break every once in a while from this dynamic where one of you goes and plays a game with people, or goes and does a sport with people, or goes and has coffee with other people. It's important to have other people in your life.
Also, with another challenge is with the constant business talk, it's always about business. It's always kind of invades everything. How can married couples kind of keep that intimacy alive when, again, you're working together all the time? It's hard to separate the two, and it can kind of be a downer. How can they make sure that their marriage is staying, that intimacy, that personal part is staying sacred and prioritized as well?
And when you say a downer, I think you also sort of mean kind of like a wet blanket on arousal, or
it's not
I mean,
hot.
because again, we know, they sort of, there's advice out there about scheduling time and for those things, and we do that as well. But it's hard to necessarily,
It's hard
if you
to
just
shut
got
the
off a pain in the
brain up.
ass
Right.
meeting with a client or something like that, and now you're coming in and frustrated, and it's like, all right, now it might be easier for me to switch gears, but it is still not always that's
Or you've got
that
that
easy.
running list of all the deadlines and all the business tasks that have to get done, and now you're trying to be intimate with the transition. It's a little challenging.
Yes. And I think if you can schedule a transition period, it's not like we work 9 to 6 and then at 6:05 we got to be ready to be intimate with each other. What if it starts with okay, now we're done with work for the day. Let's sit across from each other first, and how was your day? Or maybe if you don't want to talk about work anymore, let's talk about something else. Or let's watch a 20-minute sitcom, or let's just have a buffer in between those two. Because it is hard to go straight from work into feeling sexy and feeling like you want to connect that way. Why not 20 minutes about something else, or half an hour, or change also the environment a little bit? Obviously, as I already said, if you're not talking about work in the bedroom can feel better for that, but it doesn't have to be, let's go in immediately. Here we go. Time for sex. As you're saying, that might not feel right.
Just another box on the list to check off.
But, side point, you had said you schedule that. I do think, and I see this a lot in couples where people are like, isn't it so unromantic if you have to schedule when you're going to have sex?
No, it is not.
Okay, good. Some people think it is. We should just, the movies will show it as we should look at each other from across a crowded room, or, we're at a party, but we're talking to other people, and it's we're we should come home and slam the door and be ripping each other's clothes off. In long-term relationships, it is not like that. And there is nothing wrong with saying, it's been a while. Let's, what do you say this weekend? We make time for that. Or we have sex on Saturdays, or we make a date night every week and we either have sex then or another time. But to schedule that is not a failure. Does not mean there's not enough romance. It doesn't mean anything like that. People's lives are just so very busy that the same way you have to schedule to make sure you go and take care of your health and go to a doctor's appointment, you don't do that last minute either, or any other things that are important to you. Getting it on the calendar is important so that it shows that it's a priority, and so that it happens. Let go of that idea that means there's something wrong if we schedule it.
Yeah, well, I think that's not a dichotomy, right? It either all has to be scheduled, or it's all going to be if you have, sometimes it's that's the safe spot. There's always room for spontaneity and different things that happen. Certainly, as things mature and whatnot, the making the priority. That was the other thing you said.
Yeah.
Sometimes just showing each other that, hey, this is a priority where we're going to go in and just be focused on each other, and having that buffer of time, right? Because it's not, I think it's just as important to schedule, together in that time, or you have some other time where it's going to be, we're not talking about business, right? Because, there's that saying that sex begins in the kitchen, and that doesn't mean getting naked. It's the having non-physical intimacy.
I've never heard that saying.
You've never heard that? Well, maybe that's in my men's groups, right?
Sex
That's the advice.
in the kitchen?
Which means you have conversations and other times, you're being connected in other ways
Okay.
outside
Interesting.
of the.
I just never heard that saying before.
Well, maybe
I was
we all
like,
learned something new.
what? Okay.
It came from some book somewhere. I did not make it
Okay.
up.
And it can start in the kitchen. It can start anywhere other than where we've just been in the office talking about work. And then, I mean, that can work for some couples too. But I would say, yeah, like scheduling and having a little bit of a break. And it's a conscious effort. It sounds like it takes a lot of work for you guys. Even like you've got all these things running through your head. Can I write them down so they're out of my head? Can I realize that this is going to be the issue tomorrow too?
Well, yeah, so a lot of small business owners, like you are playing so many different roles. And so you're having to keep all the different pieces all organized and all in order, and then still taking care of, especially when you've got kids and you're married, like you got to keep all that other stuff in check too. So married couples who work together, there's lots of balls you're just kind of keeping in the air. So yeah, you have to be very
Intentional.
yes. That's a good word. Very intentional.
Well, you're absolutely right. Just because I'm saying schedule it so that you make sure it happens doesn't mean it can't happen outside of that as well. That'd be great. If you find yourself with another opportunity you weren't anticipating, oh, the kids are both out of the house and we don't have any work crazies. Let's take this opportunity on a random afternoon or something. But why not? Just and certainly spontaneity is always welcome to show up. And as I just say, if you're afraid that otherwise we might just skip it, can we make a date night? Can we make a plan for when we're gonna?
Well, and that's what I hear so often is like people, it'll come up that oh, life is just so crazy right now, and because they kind of have it in this box of there has to be this whole ritual or it has to be
perfect scenario,
spontaneous, and there's not any room for spontaneity because everything else is scheduled right. It's like, well, if your life is just full of schedules and like hectic things and things aren't going to be turned off, like you're going to have to make it a priority. Like people will prioritize going to the gym and like cutting out. It's like, well, you've got to prioritize your relationship in the same kind of way that you're prioritizing your clients and the business and kids and all those things. And that's not just sex, but it is a piece of it. But it's like having just that time to remember why you're together and like, well, same team. Like, why are we on the same team? What are we trying to accomplish here? What's our goal? And, keeping those things front and center.
Also, I don't know if this is something you guys personally, I'm not in a couples therapy session with you guys. We're just talking about like, I want to know whether a couple, do you guys kiss hello in the morning or goodbye when you're off to work? Do you say hello goodbye in the morning? Bye, mwah, have a nice day. How was your day, dear? Mwah. Like you guys work together, so you maybe don't have that, but can there still be physical touch in your day? I mean, again, we've been talking about sex, but what about other kinds of intimacy? When the day is done, can you put your arm around each other? Can you snuggle together on the couch? And maybe there isn't time for sex all the time, but that doesn't mean you can't find ways to show that, hey, it's the two of us and our relationship is different than any other two people. We're the only ones who do this together. We're the only ones who kind of hold hands on the couch. We're the only ones who, let our legs touch when we're watching a movie. Any of those sorts of things are important. Other kinds of intimacy. Plus vulnerability and talking about things that are on your mind, being vulnerable with your partner is another kind of intimacy that doesn't have to be sexual, but being able to share fears, concerns, worries, dreams with your partner. That's another way to.
And I think that's a key thing too, right? Because
it's a little tricky because like you work together and like sometimes I might have a concern or fear about the business, and it doesn't mean that like I don't think it's not that I don't think we're not going to figure it out, but sometimes if I'm concerned that if I share this concern or like this worry about the business with him, he is he's a solver. And then he's like, oh, well, do you not believe that we could do this or figure it? Like, I don't want to, I'm always afraid, like if I have a concern, then if I express it to him, then he's going to take that on as well. And he's like,
our buckets are both very full.
Right. And it's like, I don't want to, that's why it's like, sometimes it's easier to, like you said, have a friend or somebody else you can talk to about those things, because it's a concern doesn't mean it's going to actually come to fruition or whatever. And so maybe it's not something I need to bring to him at this time, especially like if I know he's already got a bunch of stuff that he is, worried about or concerned about. There's kind of like when to be vulnerable, how much to be vulnerable. Like, I don't know. That's
delicate balance.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I guess in response to if it's something that is just an anxiety that can be solved by somebody else, let's say you're saying, okay, Will's bucket is full here. I don't want to add on to it if I don't need to, but I do need to get it out. Can I talk to a friend? Can I talk to another colleague? Can I just sort of ask a family member, somebody like, does this sound crazy? Does this sound okay? Is this, or I'm just worried and I just want to let you know I'm worried so I can kind of let go of the worry. I got it out of my head. Yeah. That I would say, sure, find somebody else if it's just that sort of thing and you don't need the solution to come or any solution, and you don't need the validation to come from your partner when you know that he's a little too tapped out to be that receptive. I think that's a great way. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah, and again, like you said, this isn't our session.
No.
But in general, these are things that we've had plenty of conversations with other people about, not even on the podcast. And they're just like, they're common things that come up, and because you're both looking at these things from different perspectives, even though you're on the same team working towards the same goal. One of the common things that we do talk about, even with other couples here on the podcast, is how they differentiate roles and share responsibilities, or do they divide and conquer around some things, what things are mutual. And if you have concerns that are now falling into others buckets, that's maybe a little bit more, you got to be a little bit more cautious about that, right? So like your concern isn't coming across as an accusation or as a threatening in any way or whatnot. And so that's the thing. What I was going to go to was talking about, I think it's in terms of communication and kind of that other, other types of touch and things. It's been important to me and for other people to think about, like, what are the things that signify that you are together as a couple, and that you don't do with anybody else. And like, obvious, there's the obvious thing, right? But just even those other types of touch and communication and the things that you can bring to someone, because it's definitely come up with us in the past. And it's like, oh, I do more of these inside chores. I do more of these outside chores around the house, and like the maintenance around all this other stuff. And it's like, at the end of the day, a lot of those things could be outsourced. Like if we had unlimited resources, like somebody could do all the laundry and do all the cooking and maintain the lawn and, have a handyman, all that other kind of stuff. And so that's been one framework that I've used, is like, all right, what are the things that I could not pay somebody else to do or to come up? Like, those are the things I'm looking for in my spouse and our relationship, and that I'm trying to prioritize. And that is that communication and that vulnerability and somebody else. And like, yeah, you could pay a therapist and to do that, but it's still not the same as that person who you've chosen to be with and to, work together in life. If the goal is just, enjoying the journey of life, but there are certain things that you need to identify, or at least have been important for me, that your spouse is the only person that can fulfill those things for you. And, a lot of times that is, at least for me, like certain feelings and validations and things I'm looking for from her that I just can't possibly get anywhere else.
Right. And so even though most people do not have all of those, endless resources to hire somebody to do all those chores, you're thinking of it in terms of, even if I did have all that money, I wouldn't hire somebody to tell them my deepest, darkest fears. Like, you said a therapist thing, but like there are things that you would only want to tell your wife, or there are things that you would only want her help with. And if it helps you to kind of think through what are those things rather than the things that could really be done by anybody theoretically, that sounds helpful. Although I think in most family situations, they do still have to do most of those.
Yeah, absolutely. And those things need to be valued, right? 100% to there, but it's not in, because we work with a lot of lawyers, and one of the concepts they're taught in law school is there are certain things that are necessary but not sufficient, for like the argument. And it's like, yeah, a lot of these things, a lot of these like normal life, daily kind of tasks, that just go along with, like, they are absolutely necessary, but they are not sufficient in and of themselves to make that kind of intimate relationship.
Absolutely. One other thing about what you were saying a minute ago, I just wanted to say is don't forget that you can say, hey, this is one of those times where I want to just check if you have time to help me with this. If you're too busy, if you're too full, let me go somewhere else. I think people often forget that they can discuss the process of a conversation, not just the content. Like, hey, it's been a while since we've taken a step back and talked about how is the business looking rather than dealing with all the details. What do you say we schedule time where we talk about that? Or is it okay with you if I sometimes come to you in the middle of the workday and ask you about a thing? I don't have a thing right now. I just want to know if that's working for you. Like, are our processes working for us or not? As a conversation that can also be had. I think it's important. Not only what are we going to do about this, what's the solution for this, but how is it working for us? What do we need to change? What's not working for our process of working together?
I like that. That's good too. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of parallels to just, kind of how you're taught to operate your business and stuff
Right.
too. Like, you need to constantly have that introspection. And then that, I've had people tell me, it's like, yeah, well, my relationship isn't a business. I mean, it's not transactional. And it's like, yeah, you're right. It's got to be more than that, but it's kind of like that necessary and sufficient thing. Like at the end of the day, like, there are a lot of, there's a lot of transactional nature that goes with the relationship. And as one of the, older gentlemen in my group, has as long as mine, it's like, these relationships are like a bank account, and you're making deposits and you're going to make withdrawals, and if you don't make those deposits, eventually you're going to go to try to make a withdrawal and it's not going to be there, and where a lot of the problems come up. Like emotional deposit. Like, if I'm not there for you to listen to you, and I'm constantly like closed off, don't bring me any of your shit, there's going to be a time that, like, I need to unload some shit, and that we hear about people like, oh, we're just kind of like coexisting as roommates. And actually, a lot of our clients are family law attorneys. So like, we get to hear like all these stories, and we're asking them about their perspectives of what they've heard. And it's a lot of the same kind of themes. And we hear about people drifting, drifting apart and just kind of like coexisting. And you're going about this thing, I don't know, as another task or another chore.
What are some signs that a couple's stress is no longer just normal entrepreneurship stress, but they actually might benefit from counseling?
Okay. I would say if you're starting to notice that there's like persistent emotional distance where we're getting annoyed at each other a lot, when we're constantly in conflict or constantly feeling irritable, when our communication is broken down, like we realize, we're actually avoiding talking to each other and not coming to each other at all for our issues, or when you can feel there's obvious resentment, those are signs, right? If you're no longer having any sex, if you're no longer having vulnerability or any other kind of intimacy in the relationship, if it's been months since you've even given each other a hug, when you notice that there's a lot of like unhealthy coping going on, for example, using substances too much, overeating, withdrawing into online stuff, gambling, anything that's kind of taking you away, even in your downtime when you're not working, from your partner, that would be a sign. Or any kind of functional impairment in the relationship. For example, either person is not able to sleep, having suicidal thoughts, feeling hopeless and helpless about this relationship. I'm not sure this is ever going to improve. Those are all indications in my mind that it might be time to seek counseling rather than trying to keep managing it oneself or within the relationship.
Yeah, no, I think those are all really good signs. And then just thinking about that, like for married couples, do you think, like, if they decided like, okay, I think we want to seek counseling, do you recommend that they go in it together, or should they do separate and then together? Or like, what are your thoughts on that? Because I hear some people are like, oh, we do married couple, or like I go and he goes to his own, and then sometimes we meet together. Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it depends on the couple and the nature of the problem. But again, since I don't have other examples here to use, let's say you're feeling fine, Shannon, in yourself. You're not overly anxious or depressed in your life. You're feeling satisfied with your life. And Will, so are you. But there's couple distress. It's couples therapy first, right? If your issues feel more like they're issues with me, I'm not happy in my life, I'm not happy with who I am, or I'm not happy with how I feel in my body, or I'm not, I'm feeling like I don't sleep. If it feels like a personal issue, I would say deal with it personally first and get the help from a professional that way. If it mostly feels like it's stuff between us, like the things I mentioned, like we're emotionally distant, we're not intimate, we're not talking to each other the way we used to, that's when it's a sign that it's a couple's issue. But you can also, if you're not sure, see somebody together and say, hey, we're not sure. Is this what we need? And a professional can help you distill that if it's harder for you to figure out.
Perfect.
That's what I would say.
Great. And then if you could give one piece of advice to married couples working together, the one thing you wish every couple knew, what would it be?
I would say that it is, first of all, that seeking help is not a failure, does not mean there's anything wrong with you. And it's actually a sign of strength when things feel unmanageable to seek help. I think across the field of mental health has made great strides in the last bunch of decades. I mean, it used to be that most people thought that was something that I'm not going to do that, or there's so much stigma about mental health. It's gotten much, much better lately, and people are realizing that that's an important component of overall health. But I think there's still some sort of like, well, I wouldn't go to a therapist until I was really miserable, or until we kind of can't stand each other and we're thinking of divorce. That's when we go to couples therapy. That is the wrong thing to do. And it breaks my heart when you see that. So I think my one piece of advice would be, at the first sign that you're feeling like maybe we're not managing it well ourselves, let's do some like prophylactic. Let's go for a few sessions, clear the air, get a person there with us who can help us kind of see eye to eye more, or understand where each other's coming from. Sometimes just having a third person in the room can be really helpful. So don't wait until it's like white knuckling it and we can't figure it out to go get some help. Do it at the first time, because it's usually too late. If people wait until they're furious and too bitter and angry, it's too late to really. So I'd say, get over any feelings you have that means there's something wrong, or that there's a weakness involved in seeking help. If it feels like it's too much or it's not going well, now is the time to just, and it doesn't mean you're going to be in couples therapy forever. You could seriously, maybe only 4 or 6 sessions would be enough to put you on a better path, but it's better to not wait until it feels like a disaster.
That's great advice. Terrific.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you were able to join us and kind of share this information and your guidance. And I'm excited to have all our members get to hear it. And hopefully it has helped, another couple as well.
I hope so. Yeah. I hope there were things that I said that were helpful for couples that are working together, and also couples who aren't. And I appreciate you having me on.
For anybody that's in all those states that you listed off at the beginning, how could they get in contact with you?
Yeah.
That's a great question. They can go to my website, which is MarshaKimeldorfPsychology.com. They can, just Google my name and that will come up. And then on the website, you can read about me and what I do. You can fill out a little form and ask me to call you back. We can have a free consultation. I'm happy to talk to anybody who might be interested.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys. Take good care.